Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. It's good to be with you today. I'm here at the facility. Just spoke to Gino, just spoke to Ashton. A lot of things going around. I want to talk to you about, obviously, with the condition of the team and where the team is. Um, no secret, sitting here at 2-8, and now the Browns are coming in with Shador. Um, this is a game with so many different angles. And let's just get right to the heart of the matter, and we're going to really dig into the crux of what's the issue with the team right now. I said this a few weeks ago that I'm the death angel. You're not going to the playoffs with this team, period. I didn't think you were going before the season, but a few weeks ago, I thought it was clear it was over. And they are in a we are fighting to win now mode. I understand Pete Carroll preaches compete, 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 compete. Understand that. All right. I understand that there's competition at a lot of positions. There's places where there isn't because there is nothing to compete. I get that. I understand that. That's why I didn't think this was a team that would make the playoffs because there's no depth or very little depth. There is some, but very little. But I mean, it's clear now you're 2-8. You're not going to the playoffs. Even if you win the next seven and you finish 9-8, which I don't think's happening, you're still the compete now mode. I understand where they're coming from. And I said this to you after the game. There have been times when I have come to you and said, this does not make sense to me. This does not look, like a Pete Carroll just looks like it's discombobulated. But I'm going to tell you, Chip is doing what Pete Carroll wants. And so where I'm headed with this is I think the franchise should have switched a while ago. I would have approached the entire season this way because I said they weren't a playoff team. But at some point, they're going to have to switch. And I understand that Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant aren't ready, among other rookies, Dante and others. I get all that. I'm not pretending they are. But I don't live in a fantasy world where I expected them to come out and be star rookies. Expected that of none of them. And at some point, you got to play these guys. And if you know your season's over and you're going to take your lumps, then you take them now. You take them now. And at some point, I just think this team has to get on the same page. Mark Davis has to get everybody in a room and say, listen, we got to get on the same page. And who's ever not on the same page has either got to change or got to go. But we got to get everything on the same page because we're wasting valuable teaching time. Now, let me say something to you very quickly. I understand in the National Football League, it is all about winning and only winning. I get that. There are no moral victories. I understand that. But you also have to be a realist. And if you know you're not in a playoff, then you have to look at your team and say, okay, what can I do this year that prepares me to have less of a learning curve in the future? Okay, the Raiders, unless there is somebody that are not there that they don't think is a franchise guy, and I don't know their thinking. I know that they're scouting. I don't think they've made a decision. Ooh, this guy. I know that the Raiders like Fernando Mendoza. I know there's some that like uh, Ty Simpson, the guy from Alabama. Some, not all, like the guy from Oregon. Whatever. I don't care who it is. It's irrelevant. It's not my team. I'm not a fan. I don't care. But if you don't think one of them is a surefire one, that's fine. But you still are competing. Imagine if the Raiders had the second overall pick and they're sitting there and they say, we don't think there's a quarterback worth this pick. The guy we kind of think could be something, we think we can get in the second or third round. So you trade your first to drop back to someone else's first. And depending how far of a drop it is, you pick up their next year's first, their this year's first, and maybe this year's second. They're playing for that. And at some point, there needs to be a meeting that says, guys, we're we're not going to the playoffs this year. Now, I agree with Pete. We have to compete. We have to show this locker room that we're fighting, scratching, clawing to win every time. Fine. I get it. Fine. So we're going to run the rooks out there. We're going to, put Charles at the left tackle, and we're going to, you know, give Rodgers a look. Now, Charles Grant, arguably, has, and we don't get to watch all practice now the season started, but prior to the season I told you this, and the fact that he's dressed so much I think would tell you has looked better than Caleb. So even if it's Charles Grant, I don't dislike Stone Forsythe. This is nothing personal with him, but he's not the long-term guy. So then you throw Charles out there the rest of the year. Maybe you're concerned and you say, well, I don't know that we want to put him at left tackle. All right, flip him. Then you have to ask the question, do you flip him with DJ? Not saying that you do. I think you keep Charles at left. That's my point. But the point is, there are still ways that you can compete and try to win. Okay, then you got to ask yourself, where are other guys who can be getting reps? Okay, you brought in Lockett. Great. But do you say, listen, we've got to get the rookie receivers more targets? Now they've got to get open. They got to get open. I liked a lot of the 12 and 13 personnel that they ran. I really like that. I do think that's good stuff. But okay, then you got to look at, all right, do we bring in and he's staying that 12 and 13, so we got a little bit more help and coverage? Because let me tell you, the Cleveland Browns are pinning their ears back, and they're coming. There's an old rap song by a rapper, Fresh Prince of Bel Air. He's the Hollywood actor, Will Smith. And he talks about, I'm like a cheetah hunting out on the Serengeti. And I'm not a rapper, obviously, that's clear, but I love that song. Um, and that's going to be the Cleveland Browns. They're coming hunting. They're coming to Vegas to go hunting. And they're going to be hunting Raider quarterbacks. So you're going to have to think about, how do you protect your quarterback? I asked Gino today. I mean, there is a fine line between, you want to throw the ball away and avoid a sack, but sometimes you throw the ball away and it gets picked off. Where's that fine line? And I thought his answer was hilarious, and it was a really good answer on his part. And by the way, we have the video up when he talked about how those are both negative, the sack and an interception. So, he doesn't want to literally think of either one. If I am the Raiders, I'm going to put Charles Grant out there at left. If, you know, I'm going to try to figure out what I'm going to do with Rodgers, but I'm getting those guys in there. A lot of reps. I mean, what do you have to gain at this point with a win? You're not going to win 7 more and get to 9-8. It's not happening. What do you have to play for? Well, at least show your fan base we are playing purposely. We're doing things on purpose. One of the things that I try to live my life by is, everything I do, I want to live purposefully. And when you do that, then you can even go through something negative and find a positive. You can go through something negative and find a right way, find a a positive, I guess is the best way of saying it. So, okay, is it positive you're 2-8? No, everybody's mad. And let me tell you, everybody is. I heard some people saying, it didn't look like the players cared. I don't believe that. I will tell you, on the one touchdown, the last drive of the first half, I would have been livid at some of the effort I saw. That did not look like guys that were giving maximum effort. Now, I watched purposely, because before I level a criticism, I'm going to watch film. I saw it on that play, but it was not something substantive I saw the rest of the game in the defensive backfield. So I'm going to believe it was a great play by an offensive player, and because you didn't see it the rest of the game. Again, you may say they quit. I don't believe that, because I didn't see that. but I did see it on that play, and I went back and watched. Um, I will tell you that there is a definite change around the team. Um, and I told you after the bye week, then followed up by the mini bye, if things were not better, they're not going to be. And so I just think the entire focus needs to be to 2026. I know Pete talked about uh, Colton Miller coming back. My answer is why. Now, let me say something. I know Colton. Y'all know how much I like him personally. He's a wonderful kid. I think he's a really good football player, too. But, he's had some injuries the last 2 years. So I think this is where you just say to Colton, Colton, stay on IR. We're not going to win any games. Let's not put the tread on the tires. Now, I can guarantee you, if they sat down with Colton and have that conversation, he's going to be like, oh, no, I'm playing. That's Colton. But that's where leadership has to protect players and say, no, no, no. I think there's got to be a mandate from Spytech that comes down and says, okay, listen, we got to run the football. If for nothing else, we're setting a foundation for the future. Yes, you have to have a game plan, but if it's me, and here's where I'm getting at today, I reached out to 3 NFL offensive coordinators, all of them very successful, some who are no longer, some who are currently. And I just asked for a quick synopsis. What do you do in a situation like this if you're the Raiders? All 3 talked about, especially going against Cleveland, you want to do short drops, 3-step drops. If you're in the gun, then it's not even a 3-step. But go with some play action, some 3-step drops. If you're going to be in the shotgun, getting the ball out quick. Now that eliminates your deep game, but what it does is it negates the rushing pressure. So let's say you're in some 12 personnel, you got 2 tight end and 1 running back. If you're not going to keep those guys in the block and you're going to be in the gun, it's 1, 2, 3 out. Get the ball out. And then what happens is the quicker you get the ball out, it keeps the defensive line, from getting home to the quarterback. But that's where you got to tell your quarterback, listen, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, and maybe even not that fast. Start at 2. The ball's got to come out of your hands. It's got to come out of your hands. And if it's thrown away, great. But you got to get the ball out. Can't have interceptions, but you got to get the ball out. You got to negate the pressure. You can't. And again, this is all competing. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about Aiden O'Connell. Aiden I expect him, if he isn't, I don't know when you've watched this podcast, if he isn't there, I will be stunned if he's not up on the 53-man roster. I expect him to be there. At some point, if you're going to go with the youth movement, I don't think Gino's getting benched. I'm not saying that. But if the game gets out of hand, do you put Aiden in? Clearly, they don't believe in Kenny Pickett. That's just the reality. They don't believe in him. Fair or unfair, I'm not in practice to see that. So I'm going to take their word for it. Well, they haven't come out and said it, but their actions have. They don't believe in Kenny. Okay, fine. But I think you want to get some reps for Aiden. I mean, when you come out and say your quarterback, who hasn't even been elevated back to the 53, is getting reps against the ones, that's not a great look. That's not a great look for your backup guy, Kenny Pickett. So I would expect Aiden to be there. I would start Aiden, and that's not because I think, what is Gino supposed to do when he just has no time? Listen, there have been times in this season where Gino has looked horrible. Then there have been times where he looked like a top 5 guy, weeks 1 and 3. And then the rest of the time, I think he has struggled because he has not had any protection whatsoever. Now, I'm going to tell you, last year at the combine, Pete and Spytek were both, you can go back and watch the interviews. They were both, I don't think they were in love, but they both felt like the offensive line would be better. But you're sitting here going into week 12, and you got JPJ, who's arguably your best internal offensive lineman. Dear God, I can't even believe that was an argument this preseason. Who's arguably your best interior offensive lineman, and Colton Miller, who is your best player, are out. That's reality. That's just the reality of the situation. It is what it is. And so, what are some things that you do to look? Okay, so next year, there's a very good chance the Raiders are going to have a very young quarterback. Will they sit him, start Geno, and let him develop? Do they start him? Do they go with an Aiden who's young? And there are a lot of questions. This is where Brady and Spytek have to come in and lay vision down. Have to come in and lay vision down and say, no, this is the direction that we're going. Now, that has to happen. And there needs to be a commonality of purpose. I remember this offseason when I was giving you reasons for optimism. Now, I also gave you reasons for concern, but when I gave you reasons for optimism, is it appeared everybody was on the same page. Now, it doesn't appear that way anymore. Just doesn't appear that way. And I don't, I don't, and I don't think it's anybody hating anybody. I don't think it's anybody trying to sabotage anybody. But I can only imagine, and he has not talked to the media on the record, but I have to imagine John Spytek is sitting here thinking, let's get young guys playing. If you look at the people who've mentored him, that's pretty clear, kind of the direction. And your head coach and offensive coordinator are like, no, we want to win now. Yeah. We're not winning now. And here is a memo. You're not going to win now. And oh, by the way, if you go beat the Browns, you hurt yourself. So I think the attention and the focus needs to be on what can we do this week to compete. We're going to try to win. But our focus is, hey, if we go put Charles Grant in there and he shuts Myles Garrett down, the Raiders win the game and they win, great. If they go and they make it a young player looking at guys that are on the roster next year, great. If they play some guys that you're like, okay, you know what? We need to find out, is there a spot for them on this team next year? Great. I have no problem with all that. I think that would be the wise thing. If I'm sitting in the press box on Sunday and the Raiders lose, and I'm able to say, yeah, but look at these young players, look at the reps that they got. I think Raider Nation is almost I'm trying to the right word. I think Raider Nation is almost numb to the losing. But you go in there and you've lost and you played a lot of young players and you could see, okay, hey, this guy played a lot. Understand, Spy's trying to understand does he fit for the future here? I think Raider fans can say, okay, all right, we see what they were doing. That's sensical to us. We just can't keep having game after game where stuff is nonsensical. Can't. I understand why the focus is win now. I understand it. But you're not going to. And if you do, you hurt the team long term. So there is a way to take a forward, a 2026 approach where you're still competing, you're not tanking, but you're also doing some things. Now, what if Shador comes in and lights it up? I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that Cleveland is a good enough team for him to come in and light it up. But it's going to be a massive crowd. Cleveland's favor, massive. And the Raiders need to give your people something to walk away from this game hopeful with. If you try some new things, if you play a lot of young players, you play some guys that you're wondering what's their role going to be next year. I think fans would not like the loss, but accept it. But accept it. A loss on Sunday, I believe, gives the Raiders a really good shot at a potentially good quarterback if they want one. If they come out and say, no, no, there isn't one there at that pick. But remember, the higher you are in round two, a guy can slip. Or maybe you say, hey, listen, the guy we like's a third rounder. Great. So you're able to trade your first and your second. Let's say a quarterback slips into the early second round that another team has a first round grade on. Boom, they're willing to give you their 2 this year and their 1 for this year. I mean, for next year. Great. Winning. So a lot of things are going on. A lot of thought process. I think, and I think Gino's going to start, so I'm not saying Aiden is. I don't care who it is. Your quarterback, whether he's being told not to or told to do it. I asked Gino after the game on Sunday because Gino said that the Cowboys were daring the Raiders to run. And he talked about he did not want to go against the game plan or what had been practiced. Whatever his exact quote is, you can go watch it. I wasn't saying that he was being held back. I just said that's what he said. Those are his words. You have got to sit down with Gino or whoever's playing your quarterback and say, if they're daring you, audible. That's just good football. Gino's comments about them daring the Raiders to run and my question about audibleization, I got a lot of feedback from NFL people on that this week. A lot. I'll just read you one quote. This is a current NFL team official. Ready? Hondo saw Gino's video talking about the Cowboys daring him to run. He's absolutely right. That's true. Blown away by his answer to your question. Either he's been told not to, which he said he hasn't, or he hasn't been told he's got the authority to. But that looked like a deer in the headlights on your question. You got to make it clear. You take, now listen, this is not the Al Davis way of we don't take what you give us, we take what we want. This isn't the old Raiders. You're not that talented. Sorry. That may be in your DNA. It may be who you are. You know, I was talking to Ashton Genty today, and I asked him if he could dunk because he likes basketball. He said, yeah, he can dunk, which for his size is pretty impressive. But he's an athlete, so, you know, expect it. But you these guys are athletes. And you've got to make sure in the first time that Gino misses a read, if given full carte blanche authority to audible, if given full carte blanche authority to audible, the first time he doesn't, Chip has got to be like, what are you thinking? Now, I'm going to talk to Chip tomorrow, and I'm going to ask him. Gino talked about them daring you to run the football. And when I asked him about his liberty to audible, he talked about that, you know, wasn't what was practiced, it wasn't in the game plan. He did not say he was not allowed, but he just said want to stick with the plan. How much, and I'm going to ask him, how much would you like him when they're daring him to run to do that audible? Now, I am going to say something to you, and this is not going to be popular, but Chip can call the plays. He can call RPO options. Gino has to make the right read. And so, to me, as discombobulated as this has all looked, turn the remainder of 2025, take the next 7 games and play like it's 2026. Make decisions that benefit next year. Raider Nation is already mad enough, which is fine. If there is lumps that this franchise has to take next year that could have been avoided this year, oh, if I'm Spy, if I'm Mark Davis, if I'm Tom Brady, if I'm Pete Carroll, if I'm Chip Kelly, I don't care who it is. I am simply saying, guys, we all got to get on the same page here. Got to get on the same page. If we win, great, but we're going to win with an eye on 2026. Period. And if anyone doesn't like that, somebody has to be the voice in the room that says, you don't like that? Okay, bye-bye. And I'm not calling for anyone to get fired. I'm calling for everyone to just kind of, for those of you that are my age or older, you remember there used to be a lady on television and she'd go like this and she'd say, stop the insanity. At some point, you can't keep trying to do things. I mean, what is the purpose of every season? It is to win. Okay. You can argue that when the Colts lost and got Peyton Manning, they won. You can argue a lot of different scenarios. There's going to be a lot, there's, always quarterbacks available in free agency. And look at all these guys who got out of bad organizations and became winners. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and others. Okay. Gino rehabilitated his career in Seattle. So then let him do what he does when he was playing well. But decisions have to be made that deal about winning in 2026, even though it's 2025. And they got to get on that quick. Young players, game planning, making sure everybody is communicative and everyone understands where this is where we are. This is where we are. It's sitting down players and saying, listen, I love you. I love your commitment to playing. Colton, not happening. And I know he's going to be mad at me for saying this because he's a competitor. He's a competitive person. So I love about him. But this isn't about him. It's about the team. The Raiders are better in 26 with a completely healthy, rested Colton Miller. Can you imagine it? No fault of his own. He's out there and some guy falls on his leg, and now you go into 2026 and you don't have him to start the season? Stop the insanity. Please. It's the reality. Everybody's got to get, okay, here's the deal. This is where we are. This is where we are. We're not waving the white flag. We're still competing. But now we're competing to win 2026. This is the modern NFL. You don't get a 5-year turnaround anymore. Your fan base isn't going to tolerate it. It's been 20 plus years of failure. They got to get this thing fixed. The Raiders have to show something to their fan base. Something. Because they're already going to watch another stadium packed full of the opposing team's fans. Got to show something. Now, to me, it is, I mean, I've been saying it for a few weeks. At some point, you hope the message gets clear. This is about winning 2026. It does. At this point, you play Gino, you play it, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, but you play Gino and you use the game plans, or you play with a similar mindset that you've played all this year, and you win. Okay, what did it do? It dropped your playoff stock, and you still haven't played your young guys. Now, you got those young guys out there, and they can't get open. Dante Thornton can't get open. Dante Thornton can't do anything. Okay, then you know. Okay, we're going to need to address wide receivers some more next year. They already know that, but now they're going to find out how much more. Maybe you play them, and then those last 2 or 3 games of the year, it clicks, the light comes on. Same thing with Besh. Same thing with Grant. Same thing with Caleb. Got to think that way. You have to be, I understand the mindset. If they were sitting here today and they're 5-5, I wouldn't feel this way. They're not. And now they have to make sense and move away from the nonsensical. There are ways to win in 2025 that don't hurt you in 2026. It's just flat facts. Thanks, everybody. See you tomorrow.